Hi, it's been a couple weeks since I've been able to make my last video. Kind of wanted to give you guys a quick update on some of the videos I plan on making in the future, and then let you know a little bit about today's video. So first thing, I just recently purchased this IEMA T9 mini amp, and I got it hooked up yesterday and have started listening to music through it, and I look forward to making a video reviewing this little mini amp. There's a few videos out there on YouTube right now that are on both ends of the spectrum, and I'm curious where my model will land on that as well. I also bought this one little bear speaker switch, or amplifier and speaker switch, that I'm hoping I can install into my system and be able to switch back and forth between amplifiers when I'm testing them, just to be able to give a comparison. So like if I wanted to give this Cambridge AXA25 budget amp a review against this IEMA T9, which is actually cheaper than the Cambridge, then I'd be able to just do that hitting a switch from my couch. I'm not too impressed with this so far. I don't even think I got all the pieces in the box, or maybe I did and they're just insufficient. I don't know. It's going to take me a minute to figure that out. But look forward to making videos for those. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll see that those are available as well. But today, I want to talk about the Technics SL-BD1 turntable. This is a budget turntable that I bought off Facebook Market for 50 bucks. Why bother reviewing a cheap turntable or an old vintage used turntable? Well, if you're anything like me, you love finding a deal. I'm always looking on Facebook Market, Craigslist, or antique shops, thrift stores, whatever, for turntables, and they're getting harder to find. But when you do find one, you may be curious if it's, a good model for you. So I figured I would do a review on this Technics model. I think it's about from the 1980s. It's got some things for beginners that I think are great, but it also has some things that are really annoying. So stay tuned. Let's get this on the floor, and I'll show you all the features and some of those annoyances as well. So I bought this Technics SL-BD1 turntable off Facebook Market. I could pay like 50 bucks for it. And I've had some of these Technics models before. They're sort of like beginner model turntables, and I really thought I would be able to easily, get it up and running and sell it. But I actually have had a hard time selling this turntable. And while I've had it around the house, there's some things that are good about this turntable, and there are some things that are really annoying about it. First thing, these hinges in the back on the cover get old, right? And so you just can't really keep this up enough to actually at some point I'm going to show you got to kind of manually do everything here, and if this doesn't stay up, you're going to have to kind of constantly be holding with one hand while you do everything else with the other hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this cover off so I can show you some of the other features of the turntable, and then I'll show you some of the things that drive me absolutely nuts about this table. Okay, the first thing to understand is this turntable is a turntable that Technics made for beginners, right? This is not a high-end turntable by any means. The first way you can really tell that is if you look up here at the tone arm, you'll notice that there's no ability to adjust this. And you'll see here that it already says it's precisely adjusted by the factory, both the tracking force and anti-skating. And this is basically so that, your beginner user could just buy this turntable and start using it right out of the box. There's no setup. The other way you can tell is this cartridge is a P-mount cartridge, which basically means all you have to do to change it out is undo this screw right here, and then you just pull this out, and then you put a new one in. I actually have a video showing how to install a P-mount cartridge on my channel if you're interested. This P-mount cartridge, there's not a lot of changing out you can do with this. There's just not that many available on the market to change the sound with. So again, it's a beginner's turntable. It's not going to give you a lot of upgrade options. I did some research, and I couldn't quite figure out when this turntable was released, but I know it had to be probably 80s, maybe even early 90s, because the user's manual goes on and on bragging about Technics' ability to make products, including CD players. So CD player was introduced in 1982, so we know at least this was after 1982. It was probably like mid to late 80s. Again, maybe early 90s, but I'm thinking mid to late 80s. And these are probably ones they just mass produced and just got them out there for people, so again, they could just plug it up and use it. It is belt driven, as you can see here. I have another video showing how to change the belt on a turntable, and actually use this as the example model. It does offer 33 and 45 speed. This does give you the ability to adjust the pitch to make sure your timing is right, and you use that via this strobe light here. I'll plug it up in a few minutes and show you. And you've got your cueing lever here and your power switch. Give me a couple minutes and I'm going to tell you about this power switch. I don't really like it. There's a 45 adapter holder here, so you can keep your 45 adapter there if you like. Okay, let me turn this around and show you the back and the connections. There's some kind of things I want you to look out for in case you're buying this table. Let me turn this around, I'll show you real quick. Okay, so if you ever see one of these turntables out in the wild and you're thinking about picking one up, maybe at a thrift store, antique store, or Facebook Market or something, it's worth noting that the cords that you need to operate, they are easily unpluggable. So it may be that you often find this without these cords. So you'll notice that the power cord, which I have down there, comes out. Also, you'll notice here that it doesn't come with supplied RCA cables. So you'll need to have your own set of RCA cables, and that right there to the right of the white input, that black input, that is actually for the ground cable. So let me show you if I can. Well, I don't know that I can, but basically this plugs into that black input, and that's going to ground your table. Now that's important when you're looking for these, because these tables will hum without this. And I've had to sometimes on these Technics SL models, I've had to actually go up underneath because I can't find these anywhere. And I've had to sort of install a ground wire that I'm able to sort of pull out from underneath, and that I can use it to ground, to the receiver. So if you're buying one of these, sometimes you can find these little adapters on eBay. But sometimes you can't, and so if you're buying one of these, make sure it's got this ground cable, or at least be prepared to come up with a plan in case it doesn't. Doesn't really want to focus in on that, does it? Yeah. Oh well. So yeah, so keep that in mind when you're buying this turntable. You're going to want to make sure that you've got the RCA cables, the power cords, and that ground cord. Okay, so we've established that this is basically a beginner's turntable, right? There's not much hi-fi about this, although I would make the argument that if you were buying a turntable today and you didn't want to spend a ton of money and you were looking on the used market, I always advise people to try to find a Technics model or something along these lines that might be cheaper than buying those new plastic like Audio-Technica LP60s that just tend to break, and you kind of can't repair them once they break. I've had a couple, trust me, they just kind of crap out and really basically are good for the trash after that point. So yeah, beginner's turntable. So we really shouldn't expect like automatic start and finish, right? But there's something on this table that kind of bothers me, and it's this power switch. So you have to press the power switch in order to start rotating the platter, and that's fine. And then I'm not going to use the cue function here. I DJ enough where I don't have any problem setting the needle down myself. And so you're off and running. If you want to stop it, you can obviously raise the tone arm. But even if you have it dropped, you can just hit this power button and it'll turn it off. Now, the reason why this power button kind of annoys me is because when you get here, oh yeah, look at that. It's just gonna sit there and run. So I think it's kind of ironic to have a beginner's turntable that at least doesn't have an auto shut off function. Now, it doesn't have to have the manual return. I know a lot of people don't like that automatic function because it can degrade sound, right? But I would think on a beginner's turntable, you would at least want this to stop when it gets to the end of the record, because basically somebody's going to get up and leave. You're going to boop, get out, and that's just going to sit there and run and run and run and run until they're in the other room and they go, oh man, I forgot to power off the turntable. Again, it's not the biggest complaint in the world, but I think it's something worth pointing out on this model, because other Technics models I've also had, this is another thing too. I was able to often just start it by moving the tone arm over and dropping it down. That would engage it. And then it would get to the end and sort of stop. And I think with this one, having to press this power button, just, I don't know, for some reason that doesn't seem natural to me. So, also, just wanted to kind of give you an idea here. Here's your strobe light. It's going to kind of be hard to see on here, which you're able to use for the pitch adjust. So it is nice to be able to, control the pitch and make sure it's not going too fast or too slow. If, again, you don't mind kind of using this power button. So like I said, I bought this off Facebook Market for, I think it was 50 bucks. I actually had to install a new cartridge, and I was able to find one on Amazon, I think for like $39.99 maybe shipped, maybe about 40 bucks. And once I got it all together, I listed it for sale, I think at $150, which is still cheaper than the newer Audio-Technica cheap models that I see. And I just haven't really had much luck selling it. One lady bought it, and we kind of had worked out a deal for some other stuff. So I told her if she didn't like this to just let me know, and I would bring it back. I could take it back. And this was the one thing she didn't like. She didn't like this a power button option here. If you're asking me, if you're curious how this sounds, it's not really, there's not very many words to go on about how it sounds. It sounds like a basic beginner's turntable. And it's because of this cartridge. This is a beginner's cartridge, right? Like there's nothing high end about this. And the reality is you're not going to be able to find too many more options to get hi-fi with a P-mount cartridge. They just don't really exist. If you're a beginner and you're just interested in finding a great turntable to get started with, I think this would actually be an okay model, provided you don't mind this power switch and you've got the proper connections, whether it's the power cable, the ground cable, or the RCA cable. You just really want to make sure you have those. I think if you have this hooked up to a beginner's setup and start playing the record, I think it's definitely going to sound better than any Spotify streaming service or something along those lines. It's gonna, and I do think it'll sound better than one of those cheaper Audio-Technicas. But I wanted to make this video because when I first got started, buying vintage gear, Facebook Market, Craigslist, those were the places I kind of looked for things. And, one of the first places I would look was on YouTube to see if anybody had kind of experienced one of these models before buying it. And I thought this one had just enough quirks that I'd make a short video on it, even though it's a beginner's model, just so that people could see it and make a better buying decision, if one comes along their way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it. It'll just get spread around to other folks that like record players, turntables, vinyl records, all that stuff. Thanks for watching.